I am your brother in Christ. My wife decided just to come over here randomly at the very end and jump in right before we start. Unplanned, unprofessional. Oh well.
Chaos.
Go on with it. Absolute chaos. But if you have watched any bit of this channel, you know that's basically our norm at this point. We are joined today by asking key questions. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and say what you do?
Sure. Well, I haven't done a lot yet. I'm in the process of starting a YouTube channel. I felt the Lord calling me to do that. And it's a little out of my comfort zone, a little out of my wheelhouse. But if it were entirely comfortable for me, I think it was my idea, not his. So I want to do apologetics because I think that has such value right now. With so many people having unanswered questions, a lot of people not getting the questions that they really need. And when there are those intellectual barriers between someone and God, then I think one of my pastors used to say, the heart cannot embrace what the mind cannot accept. So it's really important to get those questions answered. And it has been important in my life and in the lives of some of my boys. So my specialties would be science, philosophy, theology, psychology, areas like that. So
fantastic. So, and if you guys are not aware, here is my lovely wife who joins me occasionally whenever she's not taking care of our lovely little son. So, hey, welcome.
I'll see my hand on that side.
Yes, you're using the wrong hand to wave. I know it's inverted. It's really weird. But, yep. So, yes, we are here to talk about prayer. So this is, again, one of our Apologetic Empire Hangouts. So at any time, anyone can from the Apologetic Empire Discord server could join us. We never know who's going to join us. But we are here talking about, does God answer prayers? So if you go ahead and plug your little thing before we get started. She has stuff to plug, so she wanted to plug. So... But she didn't prep it, obviously. So now I'm awkwardly sitting here waiting. This is how the live stream is going to go. This is not a good setting up. There's lots of sounds behind me. I'm kind of nervous. There we go. Okay.
Sorry about that, guys. I was not planning on doing that at the beginning. So
I want to plug it right off the bat. Get it going, huh?
Whoa. Things are breaking.
Don't break stuff already. It's going to be one of those live streams.
Okay. The Ziploc bag refuses to open, in my defense. Yeah, definitely one of those live streams. Okay. So, I started a pro-life fundraiser. Just wanted to let you guys all know about that. Asking $2 and I will send you some free or I guess by that donation thank you gifts of pro-life stickers. So I made 2 different styles and one of them is trapped in this bag, but they star our cute little baby. There we go.
She got it, but I think she broke it, so now
That's
I need
fine.
to give you a new bag.
So this one says, the unborn are alive. And in the center, we've got a cute little baby in the 3D ultrasound. And man, I was so impressed. I was at 13 weeks and it was so crystal clear. And there we have the other one, which is my baby, not my blood, not my body. Because actually, I don't even have the same blood type as my babies. So pretty sure that proves not my body. And definitely their own person. They need to be saved. So
you're doing a fundraiser on that. It's on Facebook. I'll put the link in the description later on. I didn't plan on doing this beforehand. So we're just all winging it everywhere. So it's on there. It'll be on the description for afterwards. But I will try to pull that up. Now, if you want to give a bit more of an introduction into why you're doing this and what the whole thing around it is, what your drive is.
This past Friday marked 48 years since Roe v. Wade, which essentially allows and kind of even to some extent promotes abortion as something that is good in certain situations that are not medically necessary just because someone wants it. And so a lot of people, as you were saying, as far as the barriers, asking key questions, a lot of people don't really see babies as their own lives, and they can try to have all these justifications for why that is. But I'm kind of trying to break down those barriers so that these babies' lives are safe because they are people.
So, and now talking about babies, little boy is having a bit of a problem going to bed tonight. So he's being a bit of a pain, so she might have to do that. But I will go ahead and put the link to a Facebook event that she's doing in the description. Please comment on. Oh, that's nice. Yes, I agree. That is fantastic.
I'm really old, so that is actually one of my childhood toys. That is an official Millennium Falcon toy that I got for Christmas one year when I was about 12 or so, and somehow most of it survived my childhood. And now that I'm empty nest and it's no longer sitting on one of my boys' shelves, it's on mine. So
yeah, is that the one that like opens up?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's the same one I had.
Yeah, I mean
it's the same one I grew up with. Awesome.
Yeah. It's I mean it's missing the radar dish, but it opens up. Awesome. And it has. It's also missing the table. There used to be that little. Everything's backwards on this. There used to be a little table in there. I'm missing the ramp. Like it only sort of survived, but yeah, it's. I'm surprised it survived as well as it did. It also thought it had battery compartment. Yeah, it had a battery compartment here too, but we left. I guess my parents left the batteries in it when we got stuck up in the attic for a decade or so, and it is never going to work again. They corroded, so it still looks okay.
Yeah, that was I used to have that. In fact, I used to collect Star Wars toys when I was little growing up because my dad was a huge Star Wars fan when it first came out. And ever since then, he just gave me all of those collectibles growing up.
Yep.
And that's what I used to play with all the time is I had a Millennium Falcon just like that. And that was my favorite toy growing up.
Was that your dad's when he was a boy?
I don't think, no, because I think they bought it for me.
Okay.
So it actually was mine originally. So
okay.
I'm not that old, but I'm getting pretty doggone close, actually. So now he just writes science fiction, Christian science fiction.
Interesting. Okay.
It deals with that, which I need to plug his book eventually, and we'll eventually do a giveaway of his book whenever he finishes it. So I'm always encouraging him to get his first book out, but it's dealing with time travel from a Christian perspective. So very interesting how he handled that.
So is he jumping all through time or just specific time periods? I know you're interested in history. Is he also?
Yeah, he goes through specific time periods, specific events that have happened throughout history.
Okay.
He deals with parallel worlds as well. Mm-hmm. And what does that mean for our salvation from a Christian perspective? Mm-hmm. What about aliens? Does Christ's sacrifice on the cross cover only humans? Or is there another offer given to other races?
It reminds me a little bit of C.S. Lewis' Space Trilogy.
Oh, yeah. During how, again, if you guys have watched any part of this, how many times do I quote C.S. Lewis on this? Oh, my gosh. That's nonstop. So every chance I get, I always throw C.S. Lewis in and give away his books. So, okay. So going on to the actual topic, now that we're done with all the fun stuff. Although the prayer can be quite fun. Let's start off with a simple question. What is the point of prayer? Let me go ahead and ask you right there, since you're asking key questions.
Sure. Well, there's two aspects of it. The primary point is relational. God is not a concept like philosophy. He's a person, and he seeks a relationship with us, a love relationship. And prayer is at its base level communication, and it's two-way communication. It's both us talking with God and us listening to him talking. And so that's its key purpose.
Absolutely. It's the communication between us and God. So we have the ability to do it whenever we want. However, I've gone through different types of prayer in a previous video. Quick prayers, diligent prayers. And it's just like, communication, just the basic, this is what's gone on for today. Making God a part of your life and making him a keystone to it, just like you would be talking to your best friend. I mean, that's what we are. We are in a relationship with him. He is our Father. He is our creator. He is our God. We do need to keep that in mind, but he wants to know us on a personal level, our struggles, our hardships, and we get to share that with him. And in that aspect, we also ask him for things, which is a part of prayer itself. So let me ask my very diligent guest here,
I don't know that's an accurate description, but
well, you're doing all this asking questions thing, so has God ever answered your prayers or given you what you have asked for?
oh yes, and sometimes in ways I didn't really appreciate at the moment. There are some prayers that are dangerous, and so sometimes you get what you want. Sometimes he says no, and sometimes he says yes, and you wish he didn't at the moment, or at least I wished he didn't, and then only later did I appreciate the yes. So.
Hey, welcome. So I've got some pretty specific ones in mind for me. Again, it's sometimes just as simple. And again, since God wants to be part of your life, if you're really struggling with something, if I'm struggling finding the keys to my car and I need to go to a work site and I have to get this job done, I will stop whatever I'm doing. I'll stop my search and I'll get down on my knees and I'll just pray. Just pray. And I've never had an issue after I've done that. I always find the keys not long after that. But just taking that priority, saying, hey, God, when I'm in trouble, when I need something, I will ask you. I will turn to you as my friend, as my help. Not just, and again, you have prayers of thanksgiving where it's like, hey, thank you. I found my keys. I can go to work. Yeah. There are also times where it's just assistance. I've had situations where I've just needed the exact amount to do something as far as money goes, and I find it in the bar of my car underneath my seat. I pull it out. It's like, oh, that's exactly what I needed. And I was going to have to run an hour north in order to get the money in order to do this. So there's been times like that just the small things have been answered. But there are also times where you just pray and you pour out your heart and you pray and pray and pray and pray and pray and just you're not seeing anything happen. You're not seeing anything come of it. Don't lose heart. There's always going to be an answer. It's not always in your timing. It's not and it may not be how you expect. A great example would be that of my grandfather, actually, on my dad's side. My grandfather was not a devout Christian. In fact, he basically turned his back on the faith. He was not a family man. He helped my dad out when he needed it. Going to college, he did help him go to Bible college, get his theological degree. But as far as my relationship with him personally, I had no relationship with my grandfather. I saw him when I was like 3, and that was it. He had no interest in seeing him. He lived states away. He had no interest in coming here. He was a very solitary man. But he also walked away from God and did not have that relationship, did not pursue that relationship. Definitely after my grandmother died. My grandmother died of cancer when my dad was 16, so I never knew her. About 16, if memory serves. So that's where he really seemed to have fallen away more and then just led his own life. We were so out of touch with him that my dad got a letter. I think it was a letter from a woman once, and he's like, "Who is this?" And he found out that my grandfather had remarried and was married to this woman who sent us a Christmas card, and we had no clue because we didn't have a relationship with him. We didn't do that communication that prayer is very similar to in our relationship with God. We didn't have any communication with him, so we had no clue what was going on with his life. Well, fast forward a couple of years later, she eventually passed away. She was a very devout Christian, and through that, it seemed like she was really working on my grandfather's heart. Now, during this whole time, this is over a 30-year span of my dad continuously praying for his dad. Just continuously praying, pouring out his heart that he would come to know the Lord, that however it would be, that he would eventually live in a way that would honor the Lord and walk with him, and eventually they would be able to be together in the kingdom of heaven, and maybe have that relationship there restored to the full nature that he desired. So, fast forward a couple years after she passed away, my dad got an invitation to actually go out there and be with him. So he flew out to go be with them. He met his grandkids for the first time, some of my brothers. They spent about a week with him, just out there hanging out, talking. He wasn't doing good health-wise. It was very obvious that he was having very poor health. He was really going downhill. So, but the main thing that happened on that trip was on Sunday, my grandfather got my dad and my brothers up and took them to church. My dad told me later his dad had never done that. In fact, he was so adamant of not going to church that he would ignore it and push it away. To have his father get up and say, "Okay, we've got to get up early to go to church," and then go to the church that is there was mind-blowing and such an answer to my father's prayer. Unfortunately, my grandfather later on still went more downhill, and we were even talking about having him move out with us at a certain point just to help provide for him. But unfortunately, at the beginning of this year, he did pass away. But he did pass away knowing the Lord in such an extreme that whenever we were able to, and it was really the Lord setting up, because it was like boom, 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 us flying out there to be with him. I was able to see him one last time. He was able to see my son, which is named after his son. So, and I'm named after him. So it goes his name, my name, and then my dad's name is the same as my son's name. So we flew out there. It was like 3 days from when we first got the phone call. The next day we flew out. We got there and he passed away the following day. And we were able to spend 1 day with him, and he was very lucid. He was very talkative. The next day he was just gone. So we were able to spend that time with him, but the pastor did come there and was telling us how active he was with the church, how persistent he came. He was just reliable. He'd come every week, and we went through all of his belongings, all of his personal notebooks, and we were seeing pages and pages just filled with Bible studies and Bible verses and this insight and that insight, and really showed that it wasn't just this superficial sort of conversion, but that he really turned to the Lord and really had that devotion, and really got to know God at the end. And again, if you are someone who is taking the time and praying for a loved one and said, "Hey, I really want them to come and know the Lord. I really want them to come know the Lord. But, I've been praying for them for 5 years and I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen any changes, or for, 10 years. my dad was praying for over 30 years before he saw the fruits of it. And he personally didn't have anything to do with his dad coming back. It was all the woman that God put in his life that led to his redemption and his deepening relationship with God. And the answer to that prayer that had been going on for longer than I've been alive. So, yeah, I guess that's just a message of encouragement to those of you that might be praying for a loved one that you're like, I just want to see them come to know the Lord. That they may come to know the Lord. The game is never done until someone passes away. Up until that moment, I just released on BitChute my video on deathbed confessionals. Up until they pass away, they have the opportunity to come to know God. They have the opportunity to repent, and never fault in your prayers for them. You know, I even pray for the President of the United States, Joe Biden. I don't like him personally. I don't like him politically. But that doesn't mean I don't want him to come to know the Lord. And even if I disagree with someone, even if I have even strong disagreements with someone, I still want the best for them. So they are never beyond redemption until they pass that mark of death. God can still reach them. So, yeah. Yes, he had a very active relationship with Christ there at the end, and that was... I've never seen my dad cry so much. So,
and you know that goodbye was temporary.
Yes, I think that's one of the most reassuring things for him, was because he definitely at the end, the last 30 years or so, he didn't have that relationship with his dad. It wasn't a buddy-buddy relationship, which I know my dad would want, because I have a buddy-buddy relationship with him. And I have a very, very tight relationship with him. And I know that he would have wanted that with his father. But yeah, it's just a pause in the relationship. There's a promise for eternity more. And I guess in our short-sighted nature, we just look at this life as being something so massive. But in the grand scheme of things, this is nothing compared to what will come. So I know we say it's like it's like a blink of the eye. It's kind of hard to wrap our minds around how much more there actually is. So
this is the birthing process.
Yep.
And
we're on, unfortunately, due to our own stupidity on taking the fruit, we have gone through the alternative option instead of taking the primary option that God originally intended for us. But that's our own fault. Luckily, God is more faithful and more forgiving than I would have been, because I would have hit the reset button.
It's actually the first series of videos I want to make is on the problem of evil and suffering.
Absolutely. Okay. Oh, no, one didn't join me. Okay, fine. She plugged her thing. Now she's grabbing her stuff. Going to go do some art. Taking care of a little boy and doing some art. So get ready for another video. Ooh. She doesn't like that part. But yeah, so praying, we're to pray without ceasing. We're to constantly be in communication with God. We're constantly to be in that relationship with God. Again, if I said hi to my dad like once a week or even once a day, just hi, bye, that's not going to develop a relationship. So prayer is critical to develop that relationship, to have that connection with God. And he has, since the very beginning of creation, that's been his entire point of our existence, is to have that relationship. And we see that in the garden. We see that even after the fall, that breaking of that relationship. And then how far God was willing to go to get the opportunity to have that restored relationship with us. So, that was a lot. I'm getting off my soapbox now. Okay. So, anything else you want to add to that? I don't know. I just went on a whole rambling.
Well, I could tell all sorts of stories if you want. I can. Another thing that's important to mention, I think, is that God's not just a vending machine. That relationship, that one of the most important aspects of prayer is God conforming us into His character, getting to know Him, conviction of our sin. As I have gotten older, I'm in my late 40s, and the more I get to know His love and His holiness, the more I see my own sin. But it's typically in that order. He doesn't show us our sin before we're ready, and we know His love to a degree we can handle that. So He's very gentle in that way and reveals it step by step. But there are times when in prayer, I've gone to Him and He's actually shown me where I need to repent and change. And so it's not just us just asking for Him. And I think a lot of sort of culturally, there's the perception that God's a vending machine and He just gives us goodies. And we go to Him and we ask Him for things, and we're disappointed if He doesn't give it. But He never withholds unless there's a good reason. But there's a lot more to prayer than just asking for things. But certainly, I can tell some stories of asking for things and how He answered if you want.
Sure, absolutely. Again, God's not a God in the box. You don't pull it open and say, see, no, okay, put him back in my pocket. Let's continue. No, it's God's there. He's changing you. It's a relationship, just like my relationship with anyone else, and asking Him for things. My son comes up and asks me for food. I'm going to give him food. Not because I'm a vending machine. I'm just going to give him whatever. Whenever he asks for anything, I'm just going to hand it to him. No, I love him. I want the best for him. Now, if he comes up and asks me for candy all the time, every single day, I'm going to say, no, because I know it's bad for you and I want to give you something better. And in that same way, God will often postpone answering the prayers, or even if the prayer is not what we actually need, He's not going to answer it. We are dealing with an entity that is independent and completely in control, where we have next to nothing in comparison. So, that relationship is critical. And again, if you have a good relationship with God, that's more valuable than anything you can ask from Him to begin with. I mean, think about it. You have a personal relationship with the Creator of the universe, with everything. That's more valuable than anything that on earth that I could ask for. It's just that relationship alone. So if you got some examples of prayers that you've gone through, or some prayers that you're like, oh, I realized I did pray for that and it didn't come the way that I wanted to, I'd say probably patience was mine, or being more outgoing. And those were both very painful processes for myself, just because naturally I'm an introvert. I'll sit down, I'll play video games. That's how I recharge. I'll just play video games. My wife is very not that way. She's very much an extrovert when I'm an introvert. So,
Sounds like a good balance.
Yeah, opposites definitely attracted there. But in order to do this, I guess that's one of the reasons I knew that this ministry was a call of God, is because I didn't want to do it. I did not want to go out and do this stuff and put myself out there on a video and see thousands of dislikes and have people come and tell me how much of a hateful bigot I am, because I believe that there is only one way into heaven, through Jesus Christ. And if you are living a sinful life, that's going to get in the way of that relationship, and it's going to pull you. Definitely, if you decide to desire that above that relationship with God, that will eventually destroy that relationship, and you will not have that relationship with God because you chose to sacrifice it. So I guess that would be my 2 cents.
Mhm.
or $5 at this point. I don't know how much 2 cents is actually worth anymore. So, and if you've got some great stories, please go ahead and speak
Golly,
however you want. It's pretty open.
I don't know which ones you want. Well, you mentioned dangerous prayers, what I call dangerous prayers, and that is prayers that are answered in ways you don't always want. I can give you prayers that answered in ways you do want, you don't want. I don't really know what you like. You have a preference?
We
No?
can go through the bad ones and prayers to avoid, or the prayers that are.
Well, I'm not saying avoid them.
I
I'm
know
just
the
saying
prayers that come with they're a bit more painful to work.
Yeah. Well, I had a pretty good life growing up. I was the son of a pastor, and grew up in Central Florida and loved it. And I just had but I didn't. I mean, my family line on my dad's side is, I think there's 13 or 14 pastors in the last 3 generations. Most of the rest are seminary professors and missionaries and all that. And I sort of assumed that inherited faith meant I was a Christian. And it wasn't until high school that I met some kids in high school that actually talked like they knew God personally, and this was very new to me. My dad was both my parents are very strong introverts, and they didn't share their faith with me in ways that really connected. And also, when your dad is the guy that's up there on the pulpit every Sunday morning, I mean, you do tune him out. I mean, you pick up some, but so it did take some people outside, but began reading the Bible and became a Christian. I gave my life to the Lord. The Lord sort of hunted me down, and I really experienced Him directly and entered that relationship when I was 17. And I went off to college, and in college I began maturing a little more in my faith. I sort of went through this joyful honeymoon period that a lot of believers go through, that peace and the joy that you come in the initial forgiveness and knowing the Lord. And I began to focus more on maturing, and I recognized, it's fairly clear, that the most important thing is love. And so I'd never really, at least at a conscious level, suffered a lot in my life. And I guess I wasn't a terribly compassionate person. I was more extroverted and not as good at listening. And I asked and focused very much on learning to love. I wanted the Lord to teach me to love. And what that, I won't go into all the details of it, but that ended up in a really terrible depression, which was enormously painful. All of my life sort of collapsed around me. I didn't know who I was anymore. One of the aspects of depression is it suppresses your ability to sense God's presence. I could no longer sense God, and I felt like my prayers were bouncing off the ceiling. God had abandoned me for all I knew. How could He do this to me? Like, I had given my life to Him, and He just up and left me in this horrible situation. There were days when the depression was physically painful. It was all I could do just to breathe. Sometimes I would lay in bed all day. I didn't want to eat. I don't even know what, my waist was smaller than my mom's. I was in rough shape. And eventually the Lord brought me through that. Well, actually what kept me in that was my intellectual understanding. I knew nothing else was true. And it's sort of like in scripture when a lot of the people left Jesus, and He turned to His disciples and said, "Are you also going to go?" And they said, "Lord, where else will we go? You have the words of truth." Or the words of life, something along those lines. And that was exactly what I felt. But I was very angry, and I basically said to God, "Look, if anything else was true, I would be out of here. But I know nothing else is, and so here I am." And he eventually, He was faithful. He brought me through that. Eventually, I learned that my inability to sense His presence was part of the depression, and not His actual absence. He did intervene when I tried to kill myself one night, but through that, as I came through it eventually, what that taught me, that transformed my character. I learned compassion in ways that I never would have in another way. I learned that was the answer in the end to learning how to love. It was learning to suffer. And that's not an easy thing to do, but that's what the Lord did for us. And that's exactly how he showed his love for us, coming and suffering and dying. And that's what he did for me. And eventually I got to the point where I was able to say, I would choose that. If I could go back in time and choose whether or not to endure those years of depression, I would choose it. I would sign up for it. But in the midst of it, there was the last thing I wanted. I hated it. I wanted to die. But it was worth it. And so, yeah, there's some prayers that are dangerous, but the Lord is not going to put you through something like that unless it's going to be worth it. Just like the suffering in this world, we sometimes don't know, why is all this evil and suffering here? Because not all of it appears to be from human evil. And yet he promises that it will be worth it in the end. And he came into this earth with us and showed his willingness, his commitment to suffer alongside us. And that shows that we can trust him. So.
Yes, through our trials and tribulations, we often grow. And unfortunately, it's like steel sharpening steel. I mean, it's a grinding process. It takes layers off. It's extremely painful. But in the end, you're a lot better off for it. I think I talked about that even in the time travel live stream I did, where people were asking me, what would you go back and change in your life? And I said, I don't know if I would. Mm-hmm. I've gone through my trials and tribulations, but those have made me who I am. Mm-hmm. My first marriage, my divorce, that abuse that happened with that whole enchilada, that time of just being absolutely lost. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't change that. Although I definitely say that was one of the harder times of my life. Mm-hmm. But because of that, I was able to grow closer to God and was able to grow with him. And eventually God restored me. And now I've got a lovely wife and an extremely cute kid. Yeah. So I can't argue with the results. So I wouldn't do that. I think the only thing I said I would use time travel for is probably just to go observe historical events firsthand. Mm-hmm. Just because I would find that so cool. But yeah, I've got a video coming up that I'm going to be doing, which is focusing on hard times, persevering through hard times. And part of that is, I'm going to give you guys a bit of a sneak peek. So still watch the video, but sneak peek at the video. Focusing on when we were a kid, right? When you were a little kid and something came up, a hardship, you didn't get the present you wanted for a birthday or for Christmas. It was the worst thing ever. For me, it was video games. So if I wasn't able to play video games for like a month, it was like, that was the worst thing ever when I was a kid growing up. It was horrible. I look back at it now and saying, wow, that was pathetic. I remember when I was really, really, really little, I had a Kit Kat bar and my dad ended up eating it. And that was like the worst thing in my mind ever, was that. And it was horrible. And then I look back at it now and I was like, oh, I was such an idiot. I was such a moron. But back then, that was my perspective. And that was my whole world was very limited. In the same way, when we enter into the kingdom of God, when we see everything laid out, what the Lord has actually done, we're going to look back at the trials that we went through and said, wow, wow, that's really what I thought my first marriage was really that hard. It really, in perspective, really not that bad. Now it looks like such a small thing that God very easily pulled me through. Even though by my perspective, that was the worst thing ever, with huge depression. Losing my way for well over a year afterwards, sort of thing. But in perspective, it did look like there was a light at the end of the tunnel. but there always is. And I have a friend of mine who's going through some rather hard legal problems. He's actually having issues. He gave someone a shoulder hug. An underage minor gave him a shoulder hug. It wasn't him initiating it. And because of that, he's now possibly facing time in prison. Yeah, that was my reaction. And I'm sitting like, his whole life has just completely dissolved around him. Everything is gone to crap. And I'm just looking at this saying, you know what? Even if it feels that this is the end, it's not. There's more to come. It's hard that you're going through right now. It's hardship. I've been very vocal in my support of him. I'm going to continue supporting him. I've gone through, I looked at this with critical eye. I've looked through the police records, the police reports, looked through the public court documents, everything I could get my hand on it. It really sounds like an overstretch of the law, classifying, a shoulder hug from someone else, and you're just standing there letting it happen as a criminal act. It really seems like an overstretch. So, and I think even the judge, by some of the things he's saying, might be agreeing with that. But again, I don't want to say too much.
Well, let's hope so.
But we'll see what happens with that. They're going through. But the main point I wanted to say is, even with that hardship, even persevering with that, is that's not the end of his life. There is so much that the Lord still has for him. That yes, this is a bump. Yes, this is hard. I'm not saying it's not. I mean, if I was in his place and I wouldn't bat an eye at it. And now I'm facing 9 or 5 or so years in jail or whatever over it. I would be very depressed. It would be very rough for me to go through. But at the same point, as Christians, we have the know-how that yes, God can handle this. We are safe. No matter what happens, in the end, we know what's going to come. We know the book of Revelation is going to come to pass. We know that God is going to reign, and that we know that as long as we stay with him, that we will be in the kingdom of heaven. So I guess I'm going off, on a tangent a little bit about hardship. So yeah, he's going through a bit of a rough time. So I don't want to say his name or anything more than that, but if you guys wouldn't mind keeping him in your prayers, I would, of course, greatly appreciate that. So.
Yeah, that kind of thing is really hard. Being falsely accused it adds another layer to it as well, to the suffering. So, yeah. And not knowing why, when you're in the middle of the suffering, it's so confusing, and you don't understand it, and it makes no sense, and really philosophizing and that kind of thing is not what people need. And it's like in Job, God did not come and explain to Job the intellectual understanding of what was going on. He came with his presence, and in suffering, what we need is God's presence, and what other people need is our presence with them, and just to be loved. And the understanding comes later.
Yeah, having that compassion and receiving that compassion in those dark hours is very important. To know that you're not the only one who's going through this, that you're not have to face this all by yourself. That no matter what, God's going to be with you. And on top of that, the Christian family is going to be with you. We're going to stand beside you, and we're going to support you. And it might get rough. It definitely will get rough. In a lot of cases, it will get rough. But keep your eye on the goal. Keep your eye on Christ. For he is everything we need. Wow, that got really dark really quick.
You want me to tell a story, lighten up a little bit?
Sure. Let's do that, because I don't want to end it and be all dark and depressing.
An answer to prayer that was not such a dangerous prayer. I started a computer. Well, I felt the Lord called me to start I started a company, and I felt the Lord lead me to continue it. And so for about 2 decades, a little over 2 decades, I ran a technology company. We went up to 13 people, but I'm not a great talent at business, and my talents are elsewhere. And so I had to learn a lot of things the hard way, but I felt the Lord calling me to do this. And so we were getting to the point where I was always committed. I felt it was a biblical principle to always pay my staff on time and in full, and always pay my bills. And we were getting to the point where we were running out of money, and we're not going to be able to continue going. But we had these 3 bids going on. I was praying, Lord, I'm doing this because I feel it's what you want me to do, but we were losing money. I felt it's irresponsible of me financially as a steward of money to keep doing this if it's not the Lord calling me. But I felt pretty convinced that that's what he wanted. But it got to the point where I realized that come the next week, if we didn't have, something didn't change, then I'd have to close the doors. And I talked to a guy very experienced in business, and he basically said, well, you need this much in a line of credit and this much in cash infusion immediately and this kind of stuff. And I was like, oh golly, that's never going to happen. But we had some pretty big bids out for some stuff, and I thought, well, if all 3 bids come through, then we can make it this way. I was working on all these bids, trying to win, kind of eke by week and pull out of this. And I thought, well, it seems pretty obvious God's gonna, if this is what God wants, he's gonna have to pull these bids through. And I told the Lord, look, if things don't pull through by I guess it was end of day, I got a certain date, I realized I'd have to pull the plug after that. And I was working on these bids and waiting for the answers to prayer. And one of the bids called in and declined. They chose someone else, which was actually unusual. We normally won our bids, and that was crushing. And normally I was working long hours, but that day, at the end of that day, I was out of the office 5 o'clock. The last hour or so, my head was on the desk because I was closing my business. I knew that there was no way this would happen. I was driving home, and my pager went off. This is back in the days of pagers, and a client called, and I got out my cell phone and called them. They said, our printer, it's speaking in tongues. I'm like, oh golly, stupid printer. So I drove across town to fix this printer after hours on a Friday. And I got there and got it fixed up just fine. And I had been looking for investors, and pretty much everyone had turned me down. And as I turned to leave, one of the guys that I had talked about investing in that had turned me down was standing at the counter of the business. And I said hi to him. And to make a long story short, within the next half hour, we'd had a conversation. We kind of went off to the side, and he ended up offering me the amount of money that this experienced businessman had told me I needed in immediate cash infusion, and more than that amount in a line of credit. And immediately my business went from I'm closing it to we have life. And in fact, we had decades of life. And I got in the car driving home, just amazed at how this had worked out in a totally unexpected way. And the entire drive home, there was a rainbow in front of me, as if it wasn't clear enough what was going on. And I never forgot that drive home, watching that rainbow, understanding what had just happened was completely beyond anything I could have arranged. And it was complete confirmation that, yeah, this is what God wanted, and he was going to take care of the details that I couldn't and make up for my inadequacies. And so not every prayer is a hard prayer to have answered. Some of them are a real joy to have answered. And so a little more upbeat answer to prayer.
Well, there's some very interesting ones. I definitely say that it's happened before in my personal life. I'm a contractor, so getting big, going with bids and getting the contracts. I know exactly where you are with that.
Yeah.
So, first of all, yeah, I've seen that happen where it's like, okay, you were very faithful in what you were doing, and you're trying to do whatever the Lord wanted you to do. And yes, I guess that's another aspect of what we were talking about earlier, that relationship. Because you're not the only one building a bridge, building this relationship. At the same time, God is building his side, towards you, and he's building that relationship with you.
Mhm.
So it's not just you running that business in a way that would honor the Lord and making it critical that it honors the Lord.
Mhm.
It is also God's there honoring that sacrifice, because there's probably times that you had to take a paid cut in order to make sure that your employees,
Yeah. There were times when I had no paycheck.
yeah,
Yeah.
in order to make sure your employees got paid, you made sure you got the bills, you made sure, but yet that sacrifice, God saw that,
Mhm.
and it did not go unnoticed. Again, God sees what is done in quiet, what's done in silence. A lot of my personal givings, my wife's and my personal givings, are done behind the scenes. We don't make a big deal about it. We don't show it out there, because that's not the point of it. The point is to do this out of a love and affection for God, and out of a love for his children. I guess the other thing is that's the first time I've ever heard of a spiritual gift being given to a printer.
Well,
I've never heard of this.
anything wrong with the printer when I got there. It was fine. It was just spewing out garbage until then. But I thought it was kind of interesting. They phrased it. It was speaking in tongues when they called me. So yeah.
Wow. Yeah. My follow-up question: is there someone there to interpret?
Yeah. I don't think so. That's why they called me.
Awesome. So that's a credible one, a credible story of a prayer that's been answered. And yes, again, goes to our relationship. Being with God. Yes, he's not our vending machine, which we press the right buttons or we do the right ritual and we get out. We see that a lot with the pagan beliefs, with polytheism. If you do the right ritual, then that means that this God would do X, Y, Z. And I looked, whenever I was studying those religions, I looked at it and said, no, God is not your play toy. If a God has created you, put you into being, he's not your play toy to be your servant. We see that a lot in Islam, where even Aisha pointed it out, saying your master goes to your beck and call.
He hastens to fulfill your wishes or something like that. Yeah.
He hastens to fulfill your wishes, whatever they are. And that's not a relationship. That's not the relationship we have with God. God is our superior. He gets the final say. And there's times that we can change God's mind, and we do see that in the Bible. I specifically talk about the book of Job, not Job, book of Jonah, the study I just did on that, where God literally changes his mind from wiping an entire city off the face of the map, like Sodom and Gomorrah, even using the same Hebrewic words for that. Changes his mind based upon what the people did, because they repented, because they turned towards him. He relented. God is a just God. He's also a merciful God. Every sin will be paid for in the end. It's just a question of who pays the bill. Do you want to choose to take it upon yourself, or are you willing to accept what Jesus Christ did on the cross and let him pay for your messes? Again, that's an offering that's given not because of your righteousness, but because of his. And how much more of a patient father he is than I am. I'm not sure I'd be as patient as God has been with me. I got a lot of time to learn as a dad. And I got my daddy shark on.
I see our relationship, because God calls us into partnership with him in what he's doing. And it's almost like, why? Like, he can do it so much better than we can. But I see it a bit like a father calling his child, his 5-year-old out into the garage building a bookshelf. And here, come help me build this bookshelf. And the little child is going to put all the nails in the wrong way, and the father's going to have to pull them out and fix it all. And it's gonna get all crooked until the father fixes it. But that's not the point. The point isn't that it be done perfectly the first time. It's that relationship. It's that teamwork. It's that partnership. And one of the things I learned the very hard way was when you're following God, that there are different levels of knowing God's will. That there's the initial one of entering that relationship with Him and loving Him, and then there's loving others, learning to love others where we are, and then the third level is where we do those relationships with God and others, and that's sort of our where we go to school, where we go to work, that kind of thing. But as we follow Him, it's His plan, not our plan. And one of the things I had to learn the very hard way was that means it's that He's responsible for the results, not me. And He's also responsible for the provision, not me. And so I had to learn, and I really burned myself out until I learned this, what is my part and what do I let God do? And as I learned to discern that and work that out with God, and there's a real peace. Like Jesus says, my burden is light, and it really is. When it's His plan and He's responsible for the results and He's responsible for the provision, and all I have to worry about each day is what does God have for me to do in His plan that day, boy, that takes a lot of pressure off. And you do have to learn in that relationship that takes trust. You have to develop that trust in Him to be willing to do that, really. But boy, that I had a lot of anxiety starting a business until God taught me some hard lessons on trusting Him and letting it be His plan, not mine. And boy, that's when the burden really does become light.
Yeah, being able to give up control, learning that you're not the one who is in control of it, giving that up. There's a lot of freedom that comes with that, but at the same time, there's a lot of, I guess in my case, at least, there was a lot of fear leading up to giving over that control. And that was, I guess, a hard lesson for me to learn personally.
And that's a lesson we learn our whole lives. I don't think I'm ever going to be done learning that lesson, how to trust God. It's just like learning to trust anybody. It takes time and experience.
Sounds good. And I mean, this has been, I think, greatly productive. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to probably end it here pretty shortly. Sure. Just for my wife's benefit, I'm going to plug her little stickers. And again, these are very fantastic. Actually, I was pretty surprised where she was able to get these done. So that's
designed them herself.
Yes, with a $2 donation. I'll put the link in the description for anyone that's watching this.
More than $2?
You can donate whatever you want.
Minimum $2.
Minimum $2.
More encouraged.
And that is going to, I think it's like a 50-50 split she's doing with a local family care center that deals with a lot of
abused women
or women that were thinking about doing abortion, trying to give them other options and showing them that there are ways to deal better. They do a lot of Bible studies. They're very, very supportive of young families, very supportive of single moms, those that choose to keep their children alive.
And that's so important because some poor pregnant girl hears some Christians say, well, you need to not have an abortion. You need to keep your child. But if she sees no options for how to do that, if we are not willing to come alongside them and support them and help them to do that, then it's much harder for them to do. But if we're willing to not just, as James says, be well and go on your way, but actually step up to the plate and help as she's, this money is going to, then that makes a real difference. And that is a way that we don't just preach what we think is right, what we believe and know to be right, but we support it and we act and we stand behind these women that need that help.
Yeah, that really is. And I've been impressed with this care center, basically.
Mhm.
I've been really impressed with what they support, what they give out, how much they give out.
Mhm.
I have really
Mhm.
been blown away with how much support they've given to small families,
Mhm.
to definitely young families who are just getting out there, to young moms who don't know what's going on, to young dads who don't know what the heck they're doing.
Mhm.
The support that they give is really amazing.
Mhm.
And I know my wife has been very active in their Bible studies and taking part of some of their ministries that they do. I'm really glad we are able to do this fundraiser to help support them. I know my wife
Mhm.
made some comments in the bottom because she's still up there taking care of our little son.
Mhm. And that's so important.
It is.
That's so important. Yeah.
So, yeah, those sort of help centers are critical for us as Christians to support and endorse.
Mhm.
I will go ahead and plug another ministry that I really love, which is
Mhm.
Compassion International. I
Mhm.
love Compassion. It is, it's a monthly donation where you donate and then you support a child in need overseas.
Mhm.
A lot of times, in the kids in danger of being trafficked,
Mhm. Mhm.
or some form of slavery, or sexually
Mhm.
abused, or
Mhm.
and these Compassion sets up safe places for these kids to be able
Mhm.
to learn about God, become educated, and eventually become productive members of the society and do good
Mhm.
for those that are around them. And we are proud supporters of that. And I would
Mhm.
encourage anyone to look into that. And we looked through many different options because there's a ton of options out there.
Mhm. Mhm.
Compassion International was one that stuck out to us because a large amount of our donation actually goes to the kid.
Yes.
It goes to taking care of the kid, where some places you actually look into it and they're actually keeping most of it for their executives.
Yes.
Compassion doesn't do that. They work mostly with volunteers to allow that to happen. They do offer every now and then to for us to go out on trips to actually meet the kids that we are helping support,
Mhm.
that we're helping enable. We are able to send letters back and forth,
Mhm.
be in constant communication. Let them know that they're not fighting this alone, that there's someone out there that actually cares about them. So we're not doing a fundraiser for them, but just because I felt like plugging them.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, okay. Well, is there anything you would like to say here before we wrap it up? Because we're really looking at wrapping it up.
I'm happy to let you have the last word.
Oh, cool. So we got someone new in the live stream, if I'm reading that correctly. Welcome aboard. Unfortunately, you're here just at the very end.
Your wife might be the best person to speak to that
My
question.
wife would definitely be
Yeah.
the best person because she has had a lot of medical issues in the past, and that's something that she was kind of concerned about going into our first pregnancy and her first birth. It went fine. We have a very healthy young boy. He's very energetic, as we can both contest to. As I was doing his interview for the Apologetic Empire, he's behind me running around in circles. So,
And anytime you're dealing with fear, it's important to listen to why. What's the basis of the fear? Is it a medical reason? That she has some medical concerns about it. Is it she's simply afraid of the pain of the process? Is it the struggle of raising the child? Is it there's all sorts of levels that fear could come from, and so I would say it's important to listen to her first, and see where her fear is coming from, and then I mean, as a guy, I really could only say so much, but maybe I can find someone who can speak to that, and who has experience in that area, to address her fears, because fear is it can be devastating, and I don't think we should downplay anxiety That we should have compassion for that and understand that and listen, and then see what needs we can meet, and assess that realistically, and then see what needs we need to refer them to someone who can meet it better, because the important thing is her and her needs, not us being the hero. And I know it's tempting for me to play the hero, but that's not what it's about. It's about what her needs are. So
Yeah, I think my wife is in the comments there addressing some of it. I can't personally say what it was. I was there for it.
Mm-hmm.
It was very long, but I didn't personally go through it. But according to her, it's well worth it. So just as I guess, because
that seems to
you
be
guys
the general
know,
opinion. Most mothers seem to think that.
and as most of you know, she's pregnant again. So obviously, she was very willing to do it again in order to reap the rewards of our little boy having a playmate. So, and she's very excited for that, and she plans on having a bunch of kids. So, woohoo!
Wow.
Bunch of little kids. I come from a big family, so I'm used to having lots of kids in the house, and it doesn't feel the same if it's empty.
Yeah, you said you had a big family.
Yeah. So. Oh, okay. So you weren't asking for someone in particular. You're just wondering. I guess that's what we would advise would be find out what the real reasons why she's would be hesitant on it. Does she need support? Does she need? There are a lot of Christian churches that are willing to support and help struggling mothers, definitely if they choose life over death. And there's a lot of organizations such as the one that we are supporting with the Fundraiser with the little baby. And yes, that is our little kid in the center there. So that is actually our son that we're sending out pictures of our son for you to put on, and it's bumper stickers or whatever you want to put it on. But yeah, I put that link in the chat. Let me see if I can actually put that in again.
What are you doing?
But yeah, to give that support to people financially, also to encourage them to, even if they're going through some hardships, because raising kids is not easy. My wife and I have the luxury of having each other as supports. So, and I work mostly from home, so I'm able to really help raise little boy and the future kids as well. But for someone who's trying or even looking at trying to do that alone, it is terrifying.
It's got to be intimidating.
Yeah, I would. If it wasn't for my wife, I wouldn't personally be able to handle it as well as I do now.
Well, you have a hard time having a child on your own.
Yeah, that would be kind of impossible. But just trying to be compassionate, I guess. Kind of weird for me, but I'm not known as the most compassionate individual out there. So I know God's still working on that part.
That's a lifelong process for all of us.
He's got a long way to go. But yeah, to know that there's support, there's always avenues to do if you choose life. And again, listen to her concerns, listen to what she's actually dealing with, because you might be going into thinking that's one thing, and you try to give her suggestions and try to give her advice. And sometimes, it might just be that she wants someone to hear her. With women, they often just want someone to sit there and listen.
With all of us. That's not just women. That's me sometimes. That's anybody who's going through a hard time, I think. Certainly for me, anyway.
Most guys' knee-jerk reaction is to try to solve the problem. Sometimes you just need to sit there and listen to the problem.
Right.
I guess that's one of my insights from my marriage is I just need to sit there and actually just listen instead of trying to solve all the issues. So
a lot of times what someone needs most is to be heard, just to listen. They don't need you to solve it. Often we can't solve it, but they just need someone who will hear them and love them, and love them by hearing them. So
Fantastic. So I think that's where we will go ahead and wrap it up for this time. Thank you guys so much for joining us. For those of you that have joined us last second, know that we're doing this every week. I just leave this open to everyone from the Apologetic Empire Discord server to join in, talk about their ministries, talk about what they're doing, and just talk about a subject. Sometimes we disagree, and that's fantastic. We can discuss it, look at it from different perspectives. Sometimes we agree, and that is fantastic. So if you guys want to join me on Sundays, I do my Sunday live streams at the same time on Sunday. So, and I don't think you have any videos up yet.
No, I've just got the channel created. I'm interested actually in the types of questions people. I used to teach an apologetics course, and the very first day, it was a 13-week course, and the first day I handed out a survey and said, what are your questions? And I would tailor the course to people's needs. And I wish there was a good way to do that on YouTube. And I'm not sure if there is, but I'm on the Discord server. If people have any questions that I can help with, I would love to. Otherwise, I'm just going to start out with the problem of pain and go from there.
So that might be a good way for you to close some of your videos, is just to do a survey. Say, hey, in the comment section below, tell me what you'd want me to cover. I got to just do that for this one. In fact, in the comment section below, leave any questions that you would like
to
address, so we can, if those might be good videos for him to do. So thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you, my illustrious guest.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
It has been a blast, and may the Lord keep you and guide you.